Let's move on to project management now. Now this is going, I tell you, this is very, very comprehensive. All right, it's very comprehensive. We're going to go straight to page 2.7. What I'm asking you to do here on this page is to think back, and in actually Japanese Zen, you have this idea of beginner's mind. You go back to when you first did something and how you felt about it, because if you think as a leader of a project, you may have inexperienced people in your team. They are actually beginners. But when you're experienced, you forget about that. You know, and your expectations of them are too high, or your communication's too shallow, or too brief, or too quick, because you've forgotten what it was like to be in their position, at their age and stage, in their career. Right? So when we actually reflect a little bit about how it was for us, as a leader of a project, we become much better in communicating and leading our team. So this 2.7 here is asking you to go back. Think about a project that was assigned to you. Might be a number of years ago now. And, well, look, when you got that assignment, what did you think? What were the things going through your mind? What were the things you weren't thinking about? The last thing, that means what didn't you think about? What didn't you anticipate? Right? What were the successes like? What were the challenges like? So I just want you to go back and think about when you did your first early projects, you didn't know much, didn't have a lot of experience, didn't have a lot of knowledge. Relive that beginner's mind for a moment. Just take this section, just fill it out. Very bullet points, that's all, very brief. Just bullet points is fine. And let's reflect on our beginner's mind to position ourselves as leaders of a project to become better communicators to new people, to the organisation, or new to the project team, or new to this piece of the business, or new to these activities, on how they can do these points. I'm particularly keen to hear, when you first got assigned to the project, either as a project leader or as a member of the project team, what was your first thoughts? When you first heard that, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? What were you thinking?
Not sure whether I can...
I'm not sure I can actually fulfill the responsibility that you're giving me. Yeah, I've never done this before, or I haven't done this very often, or this sounds difficult. Yeah. How about yourself? What did you feel?
Sorry. It's not the right answer, but I thought about when and what kind of project it's going to be. It's just...
Yeah, so your mind went into the detail a little bit straight away, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you got straight into the detail of what this is going to involve.
Yes.
Yeah.
General overview, when and where.
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
The importance of the project and the severity of
risk-reward ratio, heavily weighted on the risk side, right? Andrew, how about you?
My project was, it was basically came out good because it seemed to be incredibly complex.
Yeah, this is a detailed, complicated, intricate project. Am I actually going to be able to do this successfully? Yeah. Like, what's something about you?
I just wanted to know which role that I should do.
Yeah, well, how should I do this? What role should I play? How do I fit in? What are some things you didn't think about? You know, it says, what's the last thing you thought about? What that means, what didn't you think about? When you got the project, they said, okay, here's a project. Then later you realise, I didn't think about that. What was the thing you did? So what we're looking at here is the things that in the planning stage are critical to anticipate at that early stage. Rather than you get into it and then you realise, this isn't going according to what I expected. You hadn't planned for it. Right? So what we're saying is, how about some of the challenges? When you got that first project, Tom, what were some challenges? That is what happens in industry as well. We have a big client, they're a sporting goods manufacturer, and we do training for their marketing team on presentation skills because they choose the colours and the styles of the sports clothing and the shoes and all that sort of stuff, you know. But who gets to sell it? The sales team. So what does the sales team do? They complain, oh, you didn't pick well, or it's impossible to sell this, and they win. So the marketing team has to be very persuasive to get them on board, to get behind the selection and what's the project that's going on. So this is not just in your area, this is across the board. This comes up all the time, how to get people to sign in. Alex, how about for you? Yeah. So you had two regulatory institutions squeezing you in the middle, one the lawyers and the other being the rules. And this is often the case. You know, we have any time in business the lawyers get involved, there's an immediate, here's the deal breaker right here. You know, you've got the people trying to make something happen, lawyers get involved, their job, make nothing happen. So this is very common, very, very common. So these are sorts of things that can be very challenging in the project. So on the next page, here is a brilliant checklist for you. Brilliant checklist for you. Before you start the project, right at the very outset, if everyone went through this as the first thing they could look at, this would get people really thinking, well, you know, what's the purpose? And we break that down into 4 things. Well, why is this a project at all? Now, it's very typical that people at the top know the why. And it's very typical that it comes down as far as middle management. But it's also very typical that it doesn't go below middle management. Middle management are on the phone calls, the conference calls, they're in the meeting room when these things are discussed, they get access to reports, they have access to certain emails, they get a lot of information. They suck it up and then they don't pass it on. They all come, that's it. So the people who are actually doing the work don't ever find out why we're doing this. They get the what you have to do, this project must get done. Sometimes they might get some of the how you should do it. It's rare though, they get told the why. And without that why, it's just grind. You know? So this one here, you know, why are we even doing this? Now you think about the projects you've been involved in. Did anyone tell you the why? They tell you what's going to happen, but what about the why behind that? We forget to tell people that. And if we're leading the project, we are the middle management. Right? If we're leading that project, we are the middle management. We better make sure our team members know the why. And if we don't know the why, we better ask above us for that why. Right? Now, who had the idea? Why would this be important? Particularly in your business, why would who had the idea be important? But anyway, so this is often, it's very high-powered people driving the project. It's useful to know who's the sponsor. Who's driving this, right? Very useful. What are the benefits of this project and what happens if it doesn't happen? Well, good to know that. Why am I doing it? Why is it assigned to me? And often this is not explained. It comes back to that delegation part. No one explained what's in it for you. Or no one said, Andrew, when I think about this project and I think about people's expertise, experience and capacity, and I look at what you can do, I really want you to be part of this team. Because you've got the skills we need. You are really excellent in some critical areas which will make or break this project. And I really love you to be in this team because I know you're not only going to be contributing, you're going to be leading others who don't have as much experience. And you'll be a pivotal person to making this successful. So then you know why you're being assigned it as opposed to, Andrew, you don't look that busy. I think you better be on this project. You know? It's a completely different conversation. Motivation is different. Okay? And then who needs to be involved? Again, we're picking talent for the appropriate talent. What are the results? What does success look like? What's the should be, right? What are the constraints, limitations? What might get in our way? What are some assumptions? Our assumptions might be, like Max just said, that everyone's got the ability to produce the reports in my time frame. What I would expect them to be able to do. And that assumption may not prove to be correct. And what exactly needs to be done? And we break the project, it's a big project. There are pieces. There are pieces of a project. Let's break it down into bite-sized pieces. And then smaller and smaller pieces. What are they? What are the major pieces? And then, how do the pieces connect together? Like a jigsaw. You know, you've got to connect bits together. Or like Lego or something like that. Things have to actually connect. What's the ultimate due date? What's the drop dead, cannot change, must be done date? No extensions, no excuses, no mercy. You know, it happens on this day or else. Right? Well, do you really want me to do this in this time frame? Terrific, but I need some resources to make it happen. And who will do the work? Who will do actually which parts of the work? Who's going to do what? Now, is there somebody who's done this before? Is there somebody with great experience and knowledge that I can actually ring up and say, hey, listen, I'm doing this, but I'm not really quite sure how to do it. You've done this many times. You've got any advice for me? Can you help me out here? And do we do that? I mean, think about your own case. Do you keep reinventing the wheel every time for yourself by doing something without tapping in? And that person, I would say, they might be sitting in another country. We've got these things called international phone calls now. You can actually ring people up in other countries, you know, and say, hey, listen, I know it's 7 o'clock at night in New York, but you're still working, which is good. Can you help me out on this? Right? Who's done something similar, and what could go wrong? Anticipating what could go wrong. Now, are there any other questions when you look at this list for your organisation and your business that should be added? Is there anything missing on this list? Let's say this is a brilliant checklist. It'll capture many things for you, but there might be some special aspects of your business that this is not capturing. Is there anything that's missing?
Who are the stakeholders?
Who are the stakeholders? Yeah, okay. Who are the stakeholders? Yeah, that's a good one. What else? Who else?
Who needs to be consulted?
Who needs to be consulted? Now that's a good point, isn't it? We might think we have independent means of running this project, but in fact, others may need to get involved and may need to be told or consulted or get their opinion on the way through. Yeah. What else? What are some other things you can add to this list? Yeah. Who's the stand-in if the main actor has to do something else, right? Who can step in and fulfill a role if need be? Yeah. Who else? Or what else? Good points. What else?
Where does it fit in your strategy?
Yeah, okay. What an excellent idea. Where does this fit into the big picture here? Right, we have an overall goal for the entire organisation for the year, globally. And you have got a global goal. You have a country goal, or even a regional goal, probably. You've got a regional goal, country goal. You've got this organisation's goal, your own organisation's goal, your own unit's goal. Where does this fit into the big picture? That's a pretty good list. Now, you imagine if you formalised this list, and this was a list that every single project leader went to on the share drive, I presume you have a share drive, and said, here's my starting point. Imagine that. Imagine everybody in the team had the same list, and they could see the checklist too. What would be the impact, you think, on that in your conversations in that team and across teams? You've got 3 departments cooperating on a project. You're all looking at the same list. Wow. Every single person is looking at exactly the same list. Powerful. Where's your list today? Been doing this a long time. Here, a long time. It's in the head. And when the head moves to another place, it goes with it. And it's lost. And over time, you'll add things to this list as you become more and more skilled in doing project planning. So here's a hint. Why not have a common vocabulary, a common starting point, a common reference check list like this as an open we forget, this is the what, right, and the how, and we forget the why part. And if we really want people to be engaged, every single one of us is definitely going to be more engaged when we've got a strong why. And Simon Sinek, S-I-N-I-K, if you go on YouTube, Google Simon Sinek on why. He does I think it's a YouTube video. He does an excellent piece on the why. Just to remind us of, and again, even the why part is implicit, and we know that, but we forget to communicate it. And if we've got people in the room who are new, or people who are inexperienced in that project, maybe things that are implicit are not implicit for them. And they need to become explicit for them. So we should never forget the fact that we can't assume too much. Right. On page 2.9, we're talking about project scope. As I said earlier, we're going to go deep now on these things. And here's the first one here. Check for hidden inferences or assumptions. Right? We're looking at the should be. Okay? There might be, the should be that we're given may not be telling us everything. There might be a couple of agendas attached to that particular should be that we aren't quite clear on. There might be some assumptions that they'll know that we want this to look good in the media. You know, we might be expected to know that the certain key journalists should be covering this and writing well about it or something like that. Right? But that actually hasn't been explicitly stated, hasn't been communicated, but assume that of course you'd know that. Right? And then we describe, we communicate clearly what's in, what's out. The scope, we're going to confirm our understanding. Who's the sponsor, the driver. Then the charter, and we're going to go through these in greater detail, but the charter is the vision. What's the vision for the project? What does success look like? What are the key milestones on the way through to get to the final date? What's the minimum, maximum expectation? What are the boundaries of this thing we're doing? Why? And what's the outcomes? To justify it? What do we deliver? How do we measure it? You know, these things we're going to cover on the next couple of pages. That's just like an overview. Now, when we're doing the objectives part, what are the objectives for the project? Right? This we're starting to define the scope. Well, first thing is there should be. What is it we want to actually do here? So we've got 9 steps. Okay? And assumptions, which is number 9, there's a separate page on that completely. We'll come and do that in a minute. But let's go through some of these, right? Now the first one here, I don't know whether this is implicit or not in your organisation, probably it is. But is there ever a statement, a brief statement on what's the objective? Does anyone write out for that project team what is the objective for that team to achieve? Actually write it out. A statement, you know, everyone is aware of that statement about that particular project for their team, what it is. Does that exist? It may not exist. You may never have seen something like that. Maybe that's a good place to start when you're doing project scoping. This, you write it out briefly. This is what needs to happen. This is what we want to achieve. So everyone's clear. There's no assumption, second guessing. No, it's clear. This is what we want to happen. Measures. This is how we're going to measure progress. Performance standards. This is the performance standards. Turnaround times might be 24 hours, might be 1 hour, might be 2 weeks. No rework might be another performance standard. They should be, and for those standards, again, make them brief. Anyone can understand them. They're SMART goals. We talked about those before. And make sure they're controllable. So the scope statement, right? This first part here, it covers a lot of those areas. And we're going to write out a scope statement in a moment. Okay? Then you get down to number 4 here, the justification. Why? Who's the stakeholders that initiated this? What is the need they're trying to achieve? What are the objectives we've set for ourselves? What are some features and functions of this project we're going to incorporate? What's acceptance, the criteria for the work is being completed satisfactorily? What do you have to do to get it signed off as actually done and completed? Then, what is limiting us? And then, what are some assumptions? We'll deal with the assumptions in a moment. But let's start with that project that you chose earlier, you selected earlier. In the notes section here on this page 2.10, why don't you write just a very, very brief statement of what that project was for. You imagine you're the team leader and you're going to explain this to everybody involved, other departments, related organisations, your own team, what we are trying to achieve here. So let's get that statement done. Everyone clear? Let's have a practice at writing that statement. All good? You can write it in Japanese, you can write it in English, you're going on reading it, it doesn't matter, it's up to you. All good? Let's try that. Okay. So again, this statement is really about clarity, right? What is actually we're trying to achieve here? And having a simple thing like that gets unity of purpose and understanding. You're not at cross purposes anymore. The key here, of course, these are, you go through this part, the statement, the measures, the standards, right? Now the scope statement itself, this would be something you would put together. Justifying why this project is being done in the first place, why it is important, whose need is it addressing, right? What are we going to do? What are our objectives? How's it going to work? What does a good result look like? And here are some things that may impact on our successful conclusion of this project. Right? And then assumptions, we'll come to those in a moment. But that is something, as a project leader or even with a team, you would complete that. You would actually write that out at the beginning. Because this is forcing us to be clear. It's forcing us to communicate and share why and how we're going to do this. Which is a discipline which you probably don't have today. But if you're going to be effective as project managers, this would be a very good discipline to have. Now the assumptions part, if we go on to page 2.11, this is identifying all the risks and assumptions. So, identifying risks, what may change or may not go ahead. Now, if you're an Olympic level athlete or international level athlete, you are trained on working through risks and assumptions. What happens if the team bus doesn't come? What happens if my equipment isn't there? What happens if I become ill? They go through all of these scenarios before they even get to the competition arena. Because what you don't want is panic. And we've all done this, right? We've turned up somewhere, we've gone, wallet, purse, where's the money? Or keys, where's the keys? I left the keys somewhere, right? And you panic because you're not prepared. You haven't assumed what could go wrong. So we do it for high performance athletes, do this. Why wouldn't we as high performance professionals do the same thing? If you're a high performance professional, this is what you do. You identify the risk. What would possibly change? Or something that's not planned. What would that be? And what's the potential for things to happen? Now, we just had a level 7 earthquake in Kumamoto and a series of level 6 aftershocks. Right? We know we're going to get one here. How well prepared for that are we? Really. How well prepared are we? Fires, buildings collapsing. There's a lot of things we have to plan for. What could likely go wrong with a project? Right? And then you have a plan. Well, this could go wrong. Now here's my plan for mitigation. In my home, there's the bag. Grab the bag. Go to the designated meeting point. That's the plan. It's already done. So if something happens, you know what you've got to do. So same with projects. If something goes wrong, what have we got to do? Then you monitor the status, so you're tracking the risks and evaluate what's going on. You mentioned this before, Alex, about inform key audiences of risks, right? This is that consultation, communication.
If something's going to go wrong, tell them before it does.
Yes, the worst thing, particularly for leaders, is finding out about something's gone wrong when there's nothing they can do about it. This is the last thing you want. So if there's trouble, go early. Now, in Japanese culture though, that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one because in Japanese culture the idea is you hide it, hoping no one will notice. That's the first route, is hide it, don't say anything, hope the boss won't notice, we'll just slide on past. I used to be in the banking business, in retail banking. We had lots of compliance regulations in banking, and I was running the branch sales network for Japan for this bank. I had 550 people reporting to me, and what would happen, there'd be a compliance violation, small one. Would the person come forward and say, I've made a violation of this compliance regulation for the bank? No. They would keep it quiet. And then, like a balloon getting air stuck into it, just get bigger and bigger and bigger, because you can't hide it. Eventually it blows up, and then they get fined. It'd get to such a stage they'd lose their job. But if they'd said early, oh, look, I made a mistake. Okay, you get like that, you know? Well, don't do it again. That's all. If they try to hide it, blew them up. So, you know, people do crazy stuff. So we have to make sure that we keep track of what's going on, and if there's a problem, mention it early so it doesn't jeopardise the success of the whole thing. So you've got different, I mean, in your case, not a product risk, but it might be a schedule risk or a resource risk. I would, in the case of product risk, I'd put ego risk right in there myself. Very self-important people turn up here, have very grand expectations, so people will recognise how important they are.
There's a reputational risk though.
Reputational risk, yes.
Our product is our reputation.
Yes, that's right. But on both sides too, for the local counterparts here and also for your client group outside of this country. So, what would be some other risks there for you? Reputation would be one, ego risk would be another one. What else would there be? Media, that would be another one, I would guess. Royal commissions would be another one. Lots of Japan's not too bad because you don't have sort of organised institutional corruption too much here. You have got some of it, but not too much of it, like a lot of other countries in Asia. And things can go on there in business, particularly, which are basically we would consider them corruption. Omiyage is a form of corruption. Gifts are a form of corruption. Entertainment is a form of corruption, actually everywhere, including here. But it's not too bad here compared to everywhere else. But still, there's a bit of a grey zone there, right? So you have those sorts of risks. What else? What would be some other risks for you? Weather? Yes, weather, right. Like the other day, right? I was freezing at the back of the
At least you weren't wet.
I wasn't wet, which is good, and I tried drinking red wine to warm up, but that didn't work. I obviously wasn't drinking enough red wine. But, what other risks would you have?
Disasters.
Disasters, yes. You're running a program and then you have a big earthquake, a tidal wave, or a nuclear meltdown. That'll get your attention every time. What else? There'll be some other risks.
Staffing gaps.
Staffing gaps, yeah. Someone's ill, right? Someone's suddenly taken ill. I was to do some training for a Japanese organisation on Tuesday. On Monday, these people won't make it, they got the flu. A couple of hours later, these people won't make it either, they got the flu. Suddenly, the flu is going through the whole organisation, it's coming out at the same time, bang, they're dropping like flies out of the train. So these things happen, right? What else?
Information management risks.
Sorry?
Information management risks, like
Information management. Is the core key information goes outside? Leaked information, you never want that outside the organisation, but it goes out. Right. Now, what about the likelihood? Right? What's the likelihood? That's the other thing. You can have risk, and then there's a percentage, likely, unlikely. So we work on, is this high, medium, low? What's the risk category here? Things can happen. And what's the strategy to avoid it? What can we do to counterpoint that? On that transfer, get someone else to handle it. So I'm suddenly struck with the flu. I've got very bad back. I can't walk. Right? I need to be horizontal for the rest of the week. I'm out of it. Who's the stand-in? Who can come in and take up that resource? Mitigation, right? We assume that now. We then get to the assumptions, right? And we've got things we've presumed will happen, but they actually may not happen. So just go back to the previous page on number 9 there, that was actually the last one there. Thinking about that project that you've selected before, just write a brief statement there about how you'll address things that will happen where you don't have clear information on the way through. What do you do about it? You won't have perfect information. You're assuming something will happen, but you don't have perfect information and things will change. So just think about what's your assumption statement there about what you're going to do about it. Got the idea? Okay. For this one, just share. At your tables, just share. What would be some things you could do to nullify making assumptions that can't be sustained? Got the idea? Everyone understand? Just share your ideas at the tables. Okay. Wait. Which is the project timelines. Okay. So, let's look at the steps here. First of all, we're trying to break big projects down into smaller pieces. Now that will often happen. There will be a big project and then certain groups or teams will be allocated responsibility for certain parts of that massive big project, like ADOS, right? ADOS. I mean, that's a big project and there's certain teams. Who's doing the invitations? Who's greeting? Who's controlling the food? Who's looking after the weather? What's happening with the entertainment? Blah, 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 blah. The whole thing. So break it down. And then it gets broken down again within your team, with your responsibility, to smaller pieces again. So we're looking for the steps here. What are the major deliverables? So in your team, for each person, identify what they need to do, right? What they need to be producing. Keep breaking it down into pieces of work, right? So my tasks are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It gets down to that task level, very deep task level, which all add up to the major project being successfully completed. The next part here, there are like 4 components which tell you if you've defined it in enough detail or not. We're just having a chat before about implicit, explicit knowledge. And this is where these sorts of things, where you spell it out, really help you to identify gaps early and save yourself a lot of time, rework, or embarrassment. So, and again, can you accurately estimate the needed resources? If the project is vague, very hard to accurately estimate the resources. If there's not enough direction from the project sponsors about what they want to achieve, then it's very hard to plan and then very hard to know what resources you need. So as soon as you start to realise, well, I can't estimate the resources because I don't know this, and this, well, you better go and find those things out and ask the people up the line, well, what's about this, what about this, what about this, what about this? And this is your point, Max. Can you accurately estimate how long it will take? Well, I can accurately estimate how long it will take me And as a reasonable person, I would assume it'll take them about the same amount of time. So we all should be good for 2 weeks' time. Reality? No. You know, the reality is no. So if you can't accurately estimate and you've done your assumption risk analysis, you go, I better check. I better write to everybody and say, can you have the draft back to me by this date? Now, if that happens, and they go back and say, no way, are you nuts? Impossible. We've got too much happening. That's not a priority. I'm going to be on leave. I've come down with the flu. I hurt my back. We've had a coup. We've had an earthquake. I mean, you name it. It'd be good to know that, right? It'd be good to know that at the beginning. Right at the beginning, as much as you can know it. So, will those doing the work understand exactly what needs to be done? Well, of course they know what needs to be done. Implicit expectation that you know what to do because you work here. You know what to do because you're in the job. Well, maybe you don't know. Maybe the why has not been accurately conveyed to you. Maybe you actually don't understand why this is important. Will those doing the work understand exactly what needs to be done? Someone didn't brief that person on who they need to look for, right? Because we didn't have any project planning. We just got straight into it, right? It was a disaster. So after you've divided it down to the major component deliverables, so now we have to allocate who's going to do what. So maybe, as a group, as a team, say we're a team, and now we've broken it down into our chunks, we say, well, who do you think should do this? Who's the best person for this? Or who feels they're the best person for this piece, for example? And maybe no one says anything, in which case you will have to make an executive decision and say, well, no one's volunteered for this, but, based on how I've seen you performing, Ryan, and your experience with the recent projects, I think you're probably the best fit for this. How do you feel about doing that? And you're trying to get that buy-in. You're not trying to force her to do it, but you're praising her as capable and asking her to volunteer. Right? Well, people may not volunteer. Or you might say, as the project leader, well, Mike, please do this. Ben, do this. Blah, blah, blah. How can we make this work for you as something to build your career? We need it done. I think you're the best person for it. We can talent selection. Now, how can we make this work for you as a career builder? Something's going to help you to step up in your experience and get a higher position in the future. So you can do it that way. So you get them involved in thinking about what this means for them, put it on their resume as an achievement, something they can nominate, they can refer to, they get reference to in terms of their capability. So I think you can break it down that way. You can still you might have to nominate. See, when we do the delegation, we're nominating. We're doing a selection of talent based against requirement. So it's not necessarily a democracy. It could be, if we wanted to do it that way. But it might be, Tom, this I think really is something for you, is ideal. I mean, I can give this to probably anybody, but if I think about how this will help you, I think this will help you more than anybody else, because this
I'll do it.
part of your skill set, this part of your skill set
I'll do it. Yeah.
developed will match all the other parts of your skill set for a holistic result here, which is going to be very powerful. So thank you, Tom, for volunteering. But you see what I'm saying? Even the delegation, you can still get people involved so they have a voice in how they're going to do it. The delegation step there was they tell you how they think. Now they might tell you something that's totally unrealistic, something that's totally impractical, or something that's regulatorily incorrect, or illegal, or whatever. It could be anything. In which case you may have to work with them a bit on fixing that, which you will do. But still, they still feel some ownership because they, you start to brainstorm together how this will work. So I don't think it cuts out the delegation, Alex. I think you might do it in a different way. So you get to the work pieces part, and there's a name attached to it. So Greg will handle the negotiations with the counterparty to arrange their high-level representative to attend the meeting. So I'm delegated to do that responsibility. And there's dates it's got to be done by, and there's got to be, a meeting's got to be held, blah, blah, blah. I'm designated to do that. So that's very clear. That piece of work is mine. Andrew is doing IT in the hotel, setting up the room for the comms back to headquarters, and he will oversee both the security, the hardware, the software, and the running of that to make sure it's all humming, for example. Now, the work pieces, as I say, you might decide as a group who will do what, or you might just nominate who will do what, depending on how you want to do it. But at the work piece level, that's where the delegation kicks in. Does that help out?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So we were talking about those doing the work, understanding, and then do you need 2 or more intermediate deliverables? So what we're talking about there in terms of timing, this is timelines, right? This is planning the timeline. Something may have to happen before something else can happen. So one deliverable may need to, in sequence, to come earlier than the other. So rather than waiting till the end, there might be a critical fail point, and you say that's one time frame. It has to be done before this can be done. Rather than getting to the end and this falls in the middle and you can't get the end piece done. Right? So you might look at your timeline and say, right, this part gets delivered first by this date. If that's done, then the rest will happen. For example, so when we're developing the project schedule, now this is just, what we've got here at the bottom of page 2.13 is just an overview. I'm going to go through this very lightly because we do it in depth in the next few pages. Okay? So we're putting the schedule together. What happens first? What's the sequence of activities? Okay, what tasks need to be done? What things need to happen before other things? Right? What things have to trigger other things? What resources, at what point do we need to put those resources in? How long will it take to complete this part of the schedule? Is it a day? Is it an hour? Is it a week? Is it a month? What is it? Deliverables, okay, intermediate, final, what are these all milestones? What things are actually outside this project that might impact it? Now, draw the network diagram. This is, if you can do it, trying to, this happens, and this happens, and this happens. You start to, like a matrix, you start to visually see it. Now, for a lot of people, the visual representation of what's going to happen is very powerful for them. Other people like to hear it. Other people need to see it visually. So these are things you have to think about in your team. Not everyone receives information exactly the same way. I'm a very visual person. That's why I must have been designated from birth to become a trainer or something, because give me that whiteboard, give me that pen, baby, and I'm good, I put it up there, I can explain it to you. I can explain it to you with words, but somehow when I write it out there, I feel better capable of explaining something by using that visual representation. That's important to me. In your teams, there'll be people who learn different ways and absorb information different ways. So you need to think about that. Then you analyse the network for critical path and slack time. So critical path is things that must happen in such a short period of time. Right? And then where you've got a bit of scope. Now, we try, I think all of us try to build in a bit of margin, a bit of slack time, so the project is not super tight like a drum all the way through, because then you have problems. Something goes wrong, you've got no margin. So you build in a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there, in case you've got to adjust, in case something goes wrong, right? Which means the actual time for the project planned is usually much longer than if you actually took all that stuff out. But the risk of that is so high, and the reward is so small, we all determine, well, it's better to take longer and have no problems than to make it really super efficient and have problems. Right? So you've got some specified mandatory dependencies, legal, procedural, and hard logic. For your business, what would some of those mandatory dependencies be? Then you've got some discretionary dependencies, right? Things you have more control over. Mandatory, you can't break the law. Okay? You can't go out of a regulatory environment. You've got some security regulations, you've got some expectations, you can't go outside that. What are they in your case? Then you've got some discretion, you have control. So you determine the sequencing. Well, let's have A, B, C, D, rather than A, C, B, D. Right? Let's do it that way. Well, no, let's have A, D, C, B. You have some discretionary control over the order. What would those things be? And then, what are some external dependencies? What are things that are coming from outside the project that are going to hit you doing the project? Right? So, at the tables we'll have a discussion on what are the things that you can't control because it's designated. What are the things you can control? What are some things that can come up which can really affect everything? Blow the whole project up, actually, which you have no control over usually. And one thing here on choosing which way to go, you might start with the end. You start working backwards as one way, just one way, of looking at the project. And it's like when we do proofreading in English anyway, because English is so easy to make a mistake when your brain sees the word and ignores the wrong letter because it's understood the word and the typo is in there. But if you read backwards, your brain can't do that and it sees the typo straight away because it can't skip. So proofreading, read backwards, right, in English. So this is another way of doing it. You work backwards to change your brain in terms of how you approach it. You might be making lots of assumptions when you go from start to finish. If you go from finish to start, things might occur to you which wouldn't occur to you going the other way, for example. That's just a suggestion. But at the tables, let's talk about what are some things that you are impacted by that are mandatory, things that you cannot play around with. Where do you have some control, and what are some things that really sink the project? Everyone clear on that? Let's take a few minutes and have that discussion. So there's a tender process, there are rules, there are regulations and rules around tender, which you must go through, right? So you can't ignore that. You can't just make that decision, you have to go through that process. Yeah. What else?
Your budget.
Budget, right? You don't have much flexibility on that, you're given it, right? Yep. It's a delegation of a certain amount of money for the organisation and for this particular project. Done. What else? Can't go and renegotiate it, for example, right? What else? Safety, yes. Health and safety, yes. What else? Estimating the length of time. How do we do that? Past experience, someone who's given me some advice, someone could review the plan, we could work through the whole team, have a look at it, because your resources will impact time, won't they? If you've got more people to get through certain tasks, they get done faster. If you've got less people, it takes longer. Right? So how much resource have we got? What's the availability of that resource? What materials do we need? Do we need to get stuff printed, or can we do it all online, in which case we don't need to worry about the printing process? Just forget about that. So to improve our durational estimates, if we don't have a very clear grasp of what we're actually going to, what are the work pieces, the actual activities, then we can't estimate that. When I design training, I have a schedule. And it says at this time we'll be doing this, and at this time we'll be doing that, and at this time we'll now be doing this piece. It's set. The schedule is set, right? Because I have to control the duration. I don't have unlimited time with you. I have a very 9 to 5 fixed set here. So I have to be very clear on what activities have to happen, and that's why I'm watching that clock. I'm looking at the activities and making sure we're on track, so we get through the whole thing in the day. Right? Same for you. Then you subdivide your activities so you get to reasonable brackets, lengths. Right? Now, define start and end points. This is key, isn't it? When do we start? When do we finish? Because on your Gantt chart, some things may start at the beginning, and other things may start on the way through because there's a dependency. Something has to happen first, and then we go to the next thing second, and then the next thing third. So that start and end part, if this isn't done, then the whole thing blows up, right? So those have to be very clear. When are we going to start that? When are we going to finish it? How long will that take? Okay, we're doing that all the time. Then involve the people who do the work in making the estimate. Why would that be important? Why do you think involving the people who actually have to do the work is going to be important to get a good estimate?
So everybody takes the same time to do.
That's right. That's right. And have they got other work to do? Have they got other responsibilities? Yeah. Who knows best how long it's going to take them to do it? They do. They do. They know. They know. Yeah, this is going to take me. They look at their schedule. They go, ooh, that's 2 days. That's 2 days. Then you have people, nobody in this room, of course, who are procrastinators. You can give them a week, and they do it in the last, hour. You give them a day, they do it in the last hour. You give them an hour, they do it in an hour. Because they put it off, right? So not everyone has the same work ethic, or the same work style, or the same work preference. So that impacts how long people are going to take to do it. Now, if you know that, if you know you've got a procrastinator in your team, what do? Don't give them any time, right? Cut the time right now, because they'll leave it. It's like, when you're at college, that term paper, you started it when? The day was due or something, the night before. Classic, right? We all learn to become procrastinators, and we carry that on into our professional lives. Of course, none of you did that, but other people did that. So we make the best estimate based on what we know. Never going to be perfect, but we've got to start somewhere. Then we check. We check, how's it going? And as I said before, A to B might seem the most logical course for this particular project. They go A to C, and then they've got to come back to B. There's time involved there. So you've got to check. If they're supposed to be zigging, make sure they're not zagging. All right? You check. They're supposed to be zigging, keep zigging. Don't zag. Because they've got to rework, and that takes time. And that's because the communication wasn't clear, the monitoring wasn't done. Without micromanaging, don't dig up the seed to see if it's sprouted yet, but let them have some time to monitor. Right? Identify where you need to make adjustments. So that's when you're plotting the time duration. Very detailed for you, but that's very helpful, right? Yes. Finding that you're constantly underestimating how long things take, then you need to allow more time, right? If you're constantly overestimating, you can probably shave a bit of time off, and that's good experience. Then, and particularly if you're working with the same people in the same organisation doing the same work, over time you start to polish your understanding of what's required, and you can actually either elongate or reduce a little bit to do that. On 2.18 we talk about setting key milestones. How many milestones do you think we'd have? Would we have a few key milestones or a lot of key milestones? What do you think?
That's how big the project is. I mean, if it's a huge, complicated, multiple...
You probably wouldn't be doing the whole of it, you'd probably be doing part of it, right? So rarely we'd be doing the whole thing. It's complicated, it's got to be broken down. So let's assume it's complicated, but we've got a piece of it, which is more realistic, right? We're not going to get to do the whole thing. In fact, no one gets to do the whole thing because it's too complicated. So we break it into big pieces. We've got our teams with our piece. How many milestones do you think we'd probably have in that? Would it be under 10? Would it be over 10? Would it be under 5? Over 5? What do you think? Key milestones. About 5? What do you think?
It depends on the duration.
It depends how long it is. That's true too, yeah. I think the point is here, there's no right answer. Huh? The point is, though, you've really got to make a choice. There are many activities. There's a certain amount of time. Where do we have to really draw a line and say, right, we're on track, we're not on track? There will probably be a few of those, key ones, and lots of little ones. But everyone better be very, very, very clear on their responsibility for delivering their part of that key milestone. 2.19, talking about the baseline schedule. And this is probably the first draft we'll have of what we expect to happen. Start here, milestones here, end point here. That's our working document. And then we understand things may change, but that's what we're working off. So the idea is we take, as we talked before with Alex there about delegation and trying to break things down into smaller parts, we get down to tasks and then team members for those tasks. So we've got a fairly well-designated split and clear understanding of who's doing what. So we try and do that. The key there is that everyone clearly understands this list of 6 things, right? Everyone clearly understands what's required to do the task. Now this can be a little bit of an issue. If you are not sure how to do the task, you might not put your hand up and say, don't know how to do that. You might think, well, if I say that, they'll think I'm not professional, I'm not capable, or I'm not smart enough, or something. You might be shy to put your hand up and just say, yeah, I know how to do that. And actually you don't know how to do that at all. So, good to check that the person who's going to do the task knows what they need to do. So, it's not a bad thing to get people to tell you, in their words, how they're going to approach this. As a check. If you're the team leader, not a bad practice. Get them to tell you in their words how they're going to do their task. Okay? Then, the tasks get broken up. You might have people working in small groups or individually coordinating with others. Who's doing what? This is where your matrix becomes very good of who's got which task, who's connected to who they have to talk to, who they get permission from, who do they have to tell, etc., etc. Then how does it all fit together, the sequence? Now, we may not have the perfect sequence, but we'll start with a sequence, what we think is the right sequence. And we may find, actually, that's not going to work because we need this to happen. We discovered that something's changed. Now, this has to happen first before we can do this. But that's okay. You just change the document. But it's good to have a starting point to compare against, and that's what this baseline schedule is. Then, the conditions that will affect the task. So there might be cooperation from others, there might be materials coming from others, there might be monies have to arrive, there might be permissions have to arrive, there could be people have to arrive. There could be any number of things which will affect doing that task. If you've got someone working on another project who will become free at a point in time to join your project team, then you need to know that's still going to happen, that project has not been delayed, or that person has not been diverted to another project team. So what are the things that will affect the task? Try and get those out. Timing, okay, we go through it. Some parts take longer than others, some parts are complex, some parts you can't do by yourself. Then how all the functions coordinate. So when you're looking at that scheduling, you're trying to come up with, here's our timeline. As close to accuracy as you can get it, won't ever be perfect. And we'll have constant updates in your business. Now, here's the question. How do you deal with constant updates now? What is your mechanism for dealing with, you've got a big project and things start changing. How do you update it? What's your current methodology?
Meetings.
Sorry?
Meetings.
You have meetings, right? Okay. So you have meetings, you update everybody. What if it's more than one team? Say it's a big project, you've got multiple teams involved. How do you make sure this team's schedule has changed, and this one has changed, and this one has changed? How do you know they've changed? How do you then coordinate your schedule to fit in with their changes, or how do they fit in with your changes? How do you keep track of all that? You have shared files, on your shared drive, you can go in and see an updated spreadsheet, for example, or something like that, right? Yeah. I mean, as much as we can get away from paper, the better. And as much as we can have a single document that everyone can see that's current, which then gets into who's got editing rights.
Yeah.
How do I know that this is the correct version? Someone goes in and changes something of mine, like, oh, hang on a minute, how do I know they've changed it? I mean, these are just logistical, organisational, coordination issues. But where you've got a project, if you can have everyone, who signs off on the changes? There's got to be some designation that someone is the the only person who can make those changes, because that way it's coordinated. Because when you have open source to a document, anyone can change it, nightmare, total nightmare, if people start putting wrong things on there. So your project will be timeline, tasks, people, milestones, updates happening, and then subsections all along the line, right? And the base document, your base schedule, baseline schedule, be prepared to change that, but you have, okay, here's what we think in terms of duration we need, these are the things we expect to happen, these are sequences right, it's all coordinated, everyone knows, and not only the people in the team, but other teams will need to probably know, right? And possibly stakeholders will possibly need to know. And that, again, depending on what it is, there may be some restrictions on who can know, but the key people need to know.